Hey there, it's John from Living the Music, giving you my review of this brand new wonderful book by Paul McCartney, Wings, the story of a band on the run. Wow, this is a great resource to have for any Paul McCartney fan. What can you expect? This is an oral history, so that means you're going to have lots of different perspectives represented here. You got the Wings members, you got a couple of Paul's daughters, you got Sean Lennon, you got Jeff Emmerich, you got Chris Thomas, producer of Back to the Egg. You got design people from Hipgnosis, the record cover people that worked with Paul, and a bunch of other people also in here. So you get the whole story from the transition of his time in the Beatles into early Wings. You go through all their albums, their tours, their different lineup changes, and ultimately the breakup in early 1981. It's all covered here in some depth and quite well. I mean, I think Paul was really in the mood to tell the whole story as best he can in 2025. You get some new interviews with Paul here and the people from Wings, but you also get some older interviews that are spliced in here, so it's kind of all blended together. But I think Paul was determined to tell the story as honestly and as completely as he could, and I really give him a lot of credit for that. He brought in everybody to tell their piece. It's a lot different than Wingspan, if you remember that from, what was that, 2000s? And that was basically Paul's take on everything. He didn't really bring in anybody else that I recall, and he kind of spun everything as it was really about he and Linda. And in the documentary, he's kind of just talking with his daughter Mary, and it's kind of just a very superficial take on the whole Wing story, although it did go into some depth on his relationship with Linda. But this one, because he's got everybody involved, and I give Paul credit for that. He wanted everybody involved, so you're going to get as comprehensive a take on what went down as possible, which is really nice. So some highlights in here. I will go all the way near the end in the Japan bust whole scenario in early 1980. Paul goes into a lot of detail here. In fact, what he shares about his time in prison is the most detail I've ever heard him give. And I was really riveted by that whole thing. And to me, the book's worth it just for that. But of course, you get a lot of other wonderful anecdotes in here, talking about the exotic places they made the albums. You got the whole Lagos, Africa trip for Band on the Run. You got the Virgin Islands for London Town. You got recording in a castle for Back to the Egg. You got New Orleans for Venus and Mars. So all of that's covered. You got Nashville for Junior's Farm. It's really nice to get into the context of where they recorded these things, why they recorded them there, and what did they experience when they were in these different places. You got different lineup changes, of course, and those are dealt with, I think, quite honestly and in some detail. So really nice, really nice book. A great resource for any Paul McCartney fan that we all need to have, really. And I look forward to going back to this as the years go by, when I'm listening to an album or I just want to remember the context of this or that episode from Paul's life at this time. I can go here and get a pretty good comprehensive story about what went down. Now, there's other books you may want to get to supplement this. You got the 2 McCartney Legacy volumes, which are out there already. That leads up or goes all the way to the Japan bust of 1980. The second volume does. And they're working on the 3rd volume of that, so we look forward to that to that one. Those are always wonderful to go through, and we're so grateful that those 2 guys have put the work in for those. And this by no means makes those obsolete. You know, those go into a lot more detail, especially on the music making process, the songwriting, the being in the studio. I think that's where those legacy books really shine. But you know, it's really just, these are supplementary and complementary. You also got this book called Man on the Run, which is really nice, and the new documentary film that's coming out is called Man on the Run. So I don't know how much it's inspired by that book, but probably a little bit. And then there's also a book called Band on the Run that you can find out there. That's a really nice history of the Wings story told in narrative form. So those are the ones I would guide you to if you want to even go beyond this book. But if you're going to get one volume, this may be the definitive take on Paul's 1970s period. So thank you to Paul and his team for putting this together, for taking such care with it, for giving it such detail, and putting the whole thing in such great context. And not only do they tell their whole stories with as much context as possible, they bring in a timeline of what's happening in the world at the time. They bring a timeline of other musical releases that were coming out at the time. So again, just really well done. Nice. Those are nice additional touches that just make this extra special. So wonderful job. Highly recommended. Let me know what you think. Have you got this book? And are you looking forward to it? And when you read it, or if you've read some of it, tell me what you think of it. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. Please give us a like on this video. Take care till next time.